Hi, I'm Nan Simonson. I am today on week number 5 of our PowerPoints, and they are PowerPoints of interest as it relates to lifestyle as medicine. And they're actually part of the anagram of my book, Aging Powerfully. Is my way of outlining 10, that's the number of words in Powerfully, as an anagram, 10 modalities that relate to lifestyle and our understanding and acknowledging that lifestyle can be medicine of a greater power and to a greater degree than the pills and processes and procedures we get from allopathic healthcare, meaning, doctor, I don't feel well. Well, here's a pill, here's a procedure. Let's do who knows what kind of a process to figure it out. Instead, we start with lifestyle because lifestyle has so much to do with it. And today, this week number 5, we're talking about the word rest because powerfully we've already gotten up to E, which was exercise. That was week number 4. And now R represents actually what we call in the medical practice, for which I am the health coach, resilience. And resilience, under resilience, is rest, meaning sleep, as well as stress management. And I wrote in my book a definition for resilience. As an adjective, resilience means able to spring back into shape after bending, stretching, or being compressed, able to withstand or recover quickly from difficult situation or condition, the ability of a person to adjust to or recover readily from illness, adversity, major life changes, etc. And yes, we have the ability to do that based on lifestyle choices. So many of us take for granted that I've done it. I've done it to myself and I've done it myself, that if we simply eat right and if we move well, we exercise well, that those are the 2 main pillars of health that will, regardless of what else we do, see us through just about anything. And you know what? That's not the case because, and I'll explain to you and I'll mention the studies involved, that sleeping can actually, or lack of sleep can actually kill us. Did you know that? We can't go with a lack of sleep. We can't miss, in other words, nights of sleep, day after day after day, and be able to process. Our body will not be able to process because we will be in such a sympathetic state, meaning the body is on fight or flight the entire time that organs start shutting down. That's actually been proven, but let's get into this. I talked about in my book how I did that to myself when I was writing the book. I, in spite of writing this, was getting very little sleep. I was getting 6 hours or less. I wasn't moving a lot. I was under a lot of stress because I had told the publisher that we would be finished within a certain period of time. It was Thanksgiving time. I was having a surgery just after Thanksgiving. In other words, I piled all this stuff. The pressure was so great that my gastrointestinal tract was a wreck. And I was writing this while that was going on and thought, wait a minute, the lights just come on. I think I know what I'm doing. I cut way back on everything. I even had 2 families that were going to come and stay with me during this period. We rearranged everything. And within 2 weeks, everything was fine again. Still got everything done, but not in that kind of, I'll call it artificial pressure stance. So I learned from that as I went. The necessity and the benefit of sleep, since we'll talk about sleep and then we'll talk about stress management. Let's get right to the science. It's been scientifically proven that restorative sleep, or lack thereof, influences our cognition and our health, and our health. In their book, The Alzheimer's Solution, doctors Dean and Aisha Sherzai write, sleep was designed especially for the brain. Our bodies are bound by an automatic daily cycle, shifting back and forth between wakefulness and passive rest, but the brain enters a completely different state during sleep. This energetic state promotes two important functions: detoxification of amyloid and oxidative byproducts, and consolidation of memory and thought. Short-term memories are converted into long-term memories. Unneeded memories are eliminated. Thought processes are organized, and new connections are built. This being so, it's stunning that our society is so cavalier about whether or not we get a good night's sleep. As a matter of fact, I've said before that quite often people use it as a badge of courage that they've gone through periods with very little sleep, as if it didn't matter, and it does. The Share Size offer an outline of 13 essential health parameters affected by sleep, our overall health. And in my book, I outline all of this, but now I'm just going to give you, just to make a point, there are 13, and understand that if any of these things are weighing on you, you've got something more to examine, not just food, not just movement, but consider your sleep, your immunity, your mood, focus and attention, your ability to learn, coordination, decision-making, alcohol and drug abuse. And that even includes food. And that's why sometimes, weight regulation. It's been proven that people who are sleep deprived tend to go for the highest caloric density, especially the high sugar foods. So alcohol and drug abuse, somewhat in that same vein. Diabetes, stroke, headaches, libido, brain atrophy, all of those are affected by a lack of sleep. So what is sleep hygiene? And if you realize that you struggle with sleep, the recommendation is that we get a nightly 7 to 9 hours a day or a night. If you struggle with that, the first thing I say to the patients that I work with at the practice as a health and lifestyle coach is, let's talk about your sleep hygiene. And I'm just going to outline, again, there's so much more we could say about this, but I'm making points here, points that are important. The general outline I would give somebody is, first, keep a consistent sleep schedule, getting up at the same time every day, even on weekends. And if you can, even on vacation, helps you get your circadian rhythm locked in. Set a bedtime early enough to get at least 7 hours of sleep. People say to me all the time, oh gosh, I'm so tired during the day. I'm not getting enough sleep. Well, what time should you go to bed? Well, the show we watch is usually over at 11, or I read until midnight, or I was doing something on my computer until 1, and it got me to, well, they may not say this, but that's quite often the case. The blue light is excitatory light around you, cuts down on the melatonin being produced. But in addition to that, you create, when you are in an excited state, too much brain activity to just close it down. We wouldn't do that to a baby, and we shouldn't do it to ourselves. Establish a bedtime routine. One of the things I do is what Dr. Andrew Huberman, a neurobiologist who is a professor of neurobiology and ophthalmology at Stanford University, even has his own lab. He talks about the importance of not just getting to bed early enough, but the way of setting that being to set your circadian clock using the sunlight, the daylight to set the circadian clock. His mantra is wake up with the sun. Well, some of us don't want to wake up with the sun. It may be earlier than we want, but wake up as early as possible with the sun. Go outside and get sun in your face, not in your eyeballs, but sun in your face. Get those protons into your visual field. even on cloudy days, they're there. First thing in the morning, because what that does is it sets the pineal gland. You've probably heard me say this even if during other subjects. The pineal gland then lets the body know that 12 to 13 hours later, we're going to send the signal to start increasing melatonin. This is all physiological. It's part of our circadian clock. Got to have the sun to start it. So when people say to me, I need to go to bed earlier, I say that I'm not sleepy, I can't do it. I say to them, start with the wake up time, even if you have to set an alarm and get yourself up earlier than you want to get up. Go out, move outside, do some push-ups, do some jumping jacks, sit and read, look at your phone, doesn't matter what it is. But pay attention to where the light's coming from outside. Do that at least 2 to 10 minutes. It's not a lot of time. That's when I get out and exercise anyway. I'm on my bike or I'm walking or I'm running. And that sets that circadian motion I just went through so that you're tired enough at 9 or 10 o'clock. If you're getting up at let's say 6, you're going to go to bed at 10 and still have 8 hours of sleep. And your body will be telling you by then. I'm kind of on that one, that 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock, but I go to bed at like 9:30, read some, and man, those eyes are closing. My eyes are closing by 10 o'clock. And it's a process that had to be trained, and it was trained by going to bed early. By waking up earlier, and then having that, my body simply put me into that process and that cycle rather than my try to fight it any other way. Make your bedroom quiet and relaxing. Keep the room at a comfortable, cool temperature. As Dr. Huberman says, our body needs to cool by 1 to 3 degrees to get comfortable sleep. Limit exposure to bright light in the evenings all over the house. And he recommends this, have light, any light, in a lower position, because that's the way our ocular, the reversing of light works. If it's high, you're exciting your cells. If it's low, it's going up in our eye, and somehow that doesn't have the same effect. But also use lower bulbs. So I just have low lights. Well, like that guy behind me, that's a 25-watt bulb, and they're all over the house like that. And so at night, the house is much more dim, and he recommends that to get a good night's sleep. It sort of puts you into a sleepier mode. Turn off electronic devices at least 30 minutes before bedtime. Also avoid playing games and watching stimulating movies. Don't eat a large meal before bedtime, and avoid eating late at night in general. Exercise regularly, but avoid exercising before sleep. Avoid consuming caffeine in the late afternoon and evening. If you're overly sensitive to caffeine, avoid it altogether. Use meditation as a part of pre-bedtime routine. Avoid alcohol before bedtime. It can help you go to sleep, but it won't help you stay asleep. And if you wake up, it's going to keep you awake because it's sort of an artificial drowsiness. Reduce fluid intake before bed so you don't have to use the restroom as often. And sound and light proof the bedroom. Dark blackout curtains, as well as maybe noise machines. There's even on my iPhone a built-in noise machine. I have an app called Fan that I've used everywhere we travel, because at home we have certain fans that are really noisy. Keep them away from you as it relates to electromagnetic fields, but that's a whole other thing. I actually have a meter, and I make sure they're far enough away from us that we're not nuking ourselves with electromagnetic fields all night long. But again, another subject. Foods that can be especially disruptive to sleep include sugary foods that give our body a quick rush of energy, high-fat foods that cause indigestion and acid reflux, spicy food that irritate the stomach and can cause acid reflux, and chocolate, which contains sugar and a form of caffeine. not right before bed. It's not a good idea. And then what about stress? I'm going to read something else to you. In the last 20 years or so, research has begun to support the theory that letting go of suppressed emotions, pent-up anger, and resentment can be beneficial to physical health. This is especially true of stress. A landmark study, stress study, was published in the New England Journal of Medicine in the Psychology and Stress and Susceptibility study, in which 420 men and women were given surveys on a variety of factors, and they were then, so that they understood their either levels of stress or the way they thought, the way they processed emotions, and then they were given the common cold virus. Can you imagine being part of that study? The results of the study were very clear. It indicated that of all the factors evaluated, stress was clearly implicated in whether or not the individuals would develop a full-on cold. Since then, hundreds of studies have shown that stress weakens the immune system and is associated not only with common cold, but other chronic diseases, including heart disease, autoimmune diseases, and cancer. Stress serves an important purpose in that it enables us to respond quickly to threats and avoid danger. However, lengthy exposure to stress may lead to mental health difficulties such as anxiety, depression, and again, increased physical health problems. So what do we do to help avoid stress? Well, part of what we said earlier, and that is regular exercise, because that helps us regulate our adrenals, eat and drink an optimal diet. And of course, in our lifestyle as medicine, which follows the College of Lifestyle Medicine eating style, we promote whole food, plant-based diets that are as close to nature as possible. If meat is in there, it's just a little bit of the caloric percentage of calories. Most of our food comes from vegetables, fruits, grains, beans, which we call legumes, and seeds and nuts. Meditation practices. I did a series before this PowerPoints series called The Mind and Body Connection. And I did, I believe, 3 or 4 or maybe even more videos of relaxation techniques. And those are still available, and they're really, really helpful, because those techniques are proven to be very effective in toning down that what we call sympathetic nervous system, that fight or flight system. So meditation, social contact, social connection, being able to talk to other people and get be heard and have someone allow you to vent and then discuss. Reduce stress triggers. If you've taken on too much, if you have too many demands in your life, look at them and consider what you can let go, understanding that by not letting them go, you're not helping people, you're actually shortening your health span. And then just say no to demands that are more than you want to take on. Be sure you get enough sleep. It's not a bad idea to keep a journal and write down thoughts either before you go to bed or first thing when you wake up. Listen to music that's peaceful, quieting, and relaxing. Seek counseling if you need it. And practice stress-relieving self-care, including massages, Epsom salts baths. That really does help with the magnesium in that, which is what they use in Epsom salts. Employ an arsenal of calming essential oils that can be diffused and also mixed. Be sure, though, that you're aware of the essential oils that may affect your animals in an unhealthy way. I did a talk about this, and somebody wrote me and said, be really careful. There are things that, for example, cats, and I have 2 cats, can't handle, like citrus and some other essential oils. So that's something to be aware of. A few other techniques include mindful breathing. Mindful breathing is something that Dr. Andrew Huberman, the Huberman Lab, he's a professor of, and I spoke about him earlier, neurobiology, ophthalmology, etc., at Stanford. His lab claims that this next recommendation is the most effective breathing technique to relieve stress on the spot. It's called the physiological sigh. What happens when we become stressed is that we take a shallower breath. The carbon dioxide in our blood, or in our body and our blood, starts becoming dominant instead of the oxygen. And one way to displace that is with a physiological sigh. It's breathing in deeply, but breathing at the top of that one more time to really fill the lungs and open up the alveoli of the lungs. And it looks like this. So really breathing it in, and then letting go far longer with at least a count of 8 to 10. If you try that, you will find that what you're doing is you're actually employing the vagus nerve to bring in your parasympathetic system, which is your rest and digest system. You don't have to do that more than once or twice, maybe 3 times. You're not trying to hyperventilate, but that breathing technique really makes a difference. In the videos that I was talking about that I have on YouTube Nan Simonson, I have one on walking meditation. We do one through a garden. I have one on progressive muscle relaxation. That's another technique. And again, I'm going to read you something. In the book, Grateful Brain, author Alex Korb said that our brain is conditioned to function in a repeating way. For example, a person who excessively worries about adverse outcomes will subconsciously rewire his or her brain to process negative information only. Korb, noted that our minds cannot focus on positive and negative information at the same time. By conscientiously practicing gratitude, for example, you can train your brain to attend selectively to positive emotions and thoughts, therefore reducing anxiety and the feelings of apprehension. And then one last thing I'll read you in this section. My final words on the subject of resilience are that our sympathetic, our fight and flight, and our parasympathetic, our rest and digest systems do not work in unison. One or the other is dominant. When stress and anxiety are constant, our bodies are on high and constant alert. All other systems take a back seat, and in some way, they falter. This has become one of my most lengthy chapters of the book because it's one of the most important subjects. I just recently read and then listened twice on audiobook to Cured, and I've mentioned this a couple times. Physician Jeffrey Rittiger decided, as a physician, not sure where he was going with this subject, to study. And he's a physician, he's also a psychologist, or he might even be a psychiatrist, and he has a degree in divinity. So he's an interesting person. And he decided to study, radical remission. In other words, remission of diseases that were documented, and he uses a lot of backup here, documented illnesses that were documented to be terminal, and how people, and he has a number of stories, and there are some very harrowing health conditions that were turned around, and he documents how these people did it. And he has a chapter, if I tell you what his chapters are, into the impossible. He talks about some of these impossible turnarounds. Natural born killers. What is he talking about? Our parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system and the things that we can do to control that, and therefore to control what can actually either bring down our health, like the sympathetic nervous system, all run by the vagus nerve, well, and our adrenals, which is very influenced by the vagus nerve, or our parasympathetic, which can put us in a position that everything else we do right for ourselves is manifests good health, as opposed to being simply blocked by the sympathetic nervous system. Eat to Heal, one chapter is on food, and it's not dictating any given diet, although he does repeat what is the strongest recommendation of all overall, and that is an increase in our eating of whole food as close to nature as possible, mainly plants. Like Michael Pollan, eat food, not too much, mostly plants. And he uses that even as part of his dictate. Shut down the disease superhighway. We're back into that, our rest and digest system. Activate healing mode and healing the heart. And then his other chapters are making it clear that we can, through our thoughts, through our emotions, through the care we take of our body, through sleep and what we get from sleep, we can cure and we can turn around illnesses that most people would die from. And it's a matter of our being aware of what our power is and then how to use that power. So this was just a synopsis. This is just a tip of the iceberg on those two subjects, but I hope it's given you food for thought and that it has been helpful. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to give, as they say, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to Nan Simonson on YouTube. And I'd love to hear what you think of this and what your own experiences have been. Now, what's going to happen, because you're invited to join us, you could let me know at agingpowerfully.with nan@gmail.com that you want to join us, and I'll send you the information and the invitation link. We are part of a community that meets. I do this talk, and then we meet and we talk about this or anything else that has to do with our journey in health and the pillars of health. And it's a great community, so consider us. Take care of yourself. Have a great day, because you know I'm going to. Bye-bye.